turned up for you to kick off the last part of the conference, our event. Some gentlemen which are going to enlighten you and entertain in equal measure. I think Toby was going to say that when we did the briefing. So if you put your hands together and we can welcome the panellists to the stage, please. Okay, so this session is looking at key success milestones in the scale-up journey and how to avoid the valley of death. I can't stand that phrase, valley of death. I think we need to stop banning valley of death phrase to conferences. But nevertheless, I've put it in the title. So, before we get into the questions and start to get the insights and the tips from these experts, let's just go down the line and just give me 30 seconds introduction of who you are and what your company does. So if we just go along the line. So Jacob, if I can start with you.
Kia ora, everyone. Jacob Kohn, co-founder and CEO of Futurity. We're a New Zealand-based startup company that produce renewable chemicals from wood and multiple byproducts. And our main target applications are renewable road blind asphalt.
Hi everyone, my name is Justin. I'm from Mojia Bio. We're a Shanghai-based company that is a next generation biomanufacturing company. We mainly focus on production of flavor and fragrance molecules, polymers, and agricultural related molecules like vitamins and amino acids. So our main focus, or the main, claim to fame is that we have proprietary biochemistries that can use C1 and C2 compounds, which are very cheap to make high value products. Thanks.
Thank you. My name is Khosla. I'm a partner with Novo here, based out of Singapore. I am been with Novo for the last 5 years. Look at Asia, China in terms of investments in health and life sciences and planetary health. Novo Holdings is the investment arm of Novo Nordisk Foundation, which owns 2 flagship assets: Novo Nordisk, which is famous for insulin, Ozempic, and Wegovy, and Novo Nordisk, which is the world's largest fermentation and enzyme company. We are quite active on investments in healthcare and life sciences as well as planetary investments. We have a portfolio of around 190 companies globally with a AUM of around $180 billion. On a planetary health, we recently invested in Blue Planet here, it's a waste management company. And we have a few ag-tech investments in India and in Sweden as well. Good to meet all of you, and thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Shaun, Seaman, founder and CEO of Biomanufacturing. We do sustainable packaging. It's right here, confirming your choice, you can handle for plated. First question we'll get asked is it edible without soft rice crackers, please, or need it? It is sustainable packaging. So for us, easiest thing to think about is anything you practically see that is polystyrene, the stuff one, and that's the white packaging material on the TVs. Anyway you find that, we can use it. First instance, the physical protection of products, but also thermal insulation and acoustic insulation. And end of life can kick you spelled. And the input of it is waste inherent. So any organic waste we want, which is cardboard, food waste, anything, headache, that's the well. Sure, we'll go up to me later on. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Simon. I'm the owner of Timegate Consulting. As the name suggests, I'm a consultant. But actually my main focus is on supporting companies in the sustainable materials space as a fractional or part-time business developer. Thank you for having me on the panel today.
Pleasure. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Right, so first question, and this we're going to start with Shaun to answer first, please. At what point did you realise you had more than an idea that could turn into a business and scale? So when was the light bulb moment?
There's a couple of light bulb moments for us. So it's a cliched story, but the way we started was surfing in Indonesia. And growing up in the surfing family, you expect this beautiful blue pristine waters. And then when you get there and you have plastic wrapped around your ankles and styrofoam covering the beaches, it's one of those, you call it a profound moment. So my background's mechanical engineering, product design, kind of just dropped everything and thought, sustainability, sustainable materials, this is a real problem that we need to solve. Short version is did some tinkering around, thought, can we solve this problem? Someone introduced me. She's in the audience, I think, tonight, which is very rare. Rashida? No, okay. She introduced us to the world of fungi, which is actually quite special that we can talk about her. And 5 years later, we've got to the point of a working product. But to answer your question of light bulb moment, it was one of those, does this material make sense? Can we make it? Will anyone buy it? Will anyone fund it? The very quick answer to that was we put up a website once we had come up with the design. How does everything look? And since loading the website, the first weekend we got our first customer inbound, and then it's been roughly every 3 days we get a new lead for the last 5 years. So the demand is absolutely outrageous. It's very good. Everyone wants to see the change of it. The reality now sits on us of how much can we make. If someone wants to place a large order, how do you fulfill 10,000 units of this? But that, for me, it was that profound emotional moment followed by a very, very clear market demand of this is what we need and we can make this for them.
Great. So you've got a good problem to tackle,
Oh, yeah.
which could affect the value of death. That's a good problem to have. Jacob?
I think every idea needs to quickly be followed by questions, and I'm sure it's the same for everyone. But what is that layering of things that need to be true for this to actually stack up? And to Shaun's point as well, it's probably the culmination of layers that surrounded what we were originally trying to achieve. When you say, okay, this makes sense, and we're going to advance it to the next stage or take that next set of risks.
Thank you. And Justin, please.
Yeah, I think for me, the thing that really caught my eye when I first joined Mojia was that they completely changed the way they thought about how biology was done or biomanufacturing was done. Right? Most biomanufacturing works on growth-coupled production. Usually, you want to grow your cells, produce at the same time. There's all these other things involved. But Mojia approached it from a very practical, pragmatic way of doing it. They want to approach it like chemistry. So in chemistry, all you have is a short pathway, 1-2 reactions. You put your catalyst in, you take your product, your substrate, you make it into product. That's how Mojia does everything. So they don't want to grow yourself. You don't want to grow your cells together. You don't want to make all these other things go through native metabolism, dozens of reactions. They just want to do that short, fast, simple, and you get really high titers, really high yields with that. And that's how they approached it. And I was blown away when I first saw how they were doing things. That's why I joined the company to begin with. So that's why I think that was the light bulb moment for me. That's how it should work, I think. That's how all biomanufacturing should work.
Thank you. And finally, Simon?
Yeah, maybe to give you another angle to that question. So actually, I don't think it's necessary for everyone to have a light bulb moment, because I think there are many great entrepreneurs here, and I don't think that all of us are geniuses when it comes to engineering or science. And likewise, these geniuses, they might not be entrepreneurs. And I think that creates a really nice opportunity for venture capital to come together with entrepreneurs and take one of the many great ideas that are in research institutes or at universities at an R&D scale, and then bring it to commercial reality, to commercial scale. And I think events like these 3 days here are a fantastic opportunity to make the right connections for just that.
Yeah, and I think in one of the panel discussions earlier, we were talking about, that the ability to be flexible but within structure. So if you see a new opportunity, you can take it. So the light bulb moment might not happen as it happened to Shaun. It might happen 5 years later. I know you've recently pivoted, Jacob, into new applications. Okay, Nav, let's turn to you. I'm imagining that you do not invest on light bulb moments. So tell us, what is the bare minimum that you need to see from a startup before entertaining a conversation?
Yeah, I think fortunately, unfortunately, we invest when the room is fully lighted and it's not a small bulb. But yeah, there are a few things which we do look at as I wouldn't say early stage, very early stage, or I would say at a growth stage or early growth stage. Frankly, I mean, the biggest thing is that the company or the venture has moved away from being just a science project in the lab to a more potential business asset. I think that's very important. Second is obviously it has crossed the proof of concept stage and it has got validation, whether the validation comes from use cases or an academic study or being used at a particular pilot project or something. But validation is very, very important for us. Third is obviously we look at whether this venture can scale up or not at some stage. I mean, if it's something being produced after 6 months, a single project or a single loaf of bread or whatever it is, whether there's scalability and whether we as investors can come in and add value, and this can potentially scale up to be a large project. So that's important. I think in terms of, as we are financial investors, we do look at unit economics. I think that's very important, because as you scale up and the venture, it is very important for the unit economics to be positive and make profitability, which is a win-win situation for the founders and investors as well. And I think the most important thing is the quality of the team, because I think a science project can happen in a lab, that's fine. But I think when that project goes, or when a startup company goes in track of a large venture or a large business, the founding team quality is the most important, I would say. Whether they have the maturity, whether they have the vision and the bandwidth to scale it up and run as a commercial business. So I think those things are quite important. In addition to these, we also look at what provides strength to the business or the company as it scales up, whether it's regulatory landscape, whether they are very strong on regulatory approvals across the countries, whether it's the patents or the IPs they have, whether it's clear partnership with the customers or other corporates, what is the exit there, and again, what is the repeat use of that product, whether there's a repeatability, whether the customers will go for them. I think those are a few things we look at. I mean, it's a very broad question, but those are the key things I would say.
Thank you. And a few of those have come up so far this morning as well, in terms of progression and scale and what you need. Simon, I'm going to come to you first of all. So, what were some of the challenges that you faced in the early days with your own company or companies that you've worked with? What are the sort of the big pitfalls or the big challenges that people have to overcome, or you overcame, and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, so from some of the collaborations and partnerships I had over the last years, I think one of the big takeaways is that as a startup in the chemical materials space, when you scale up your technology, you heavily depend on external partners and contractors to do that. And that collaboration for a startup is really make or break, because these collaboration partners, they have their own agenda, they have their own timeline, they have their own working routine, and they have their own priorities. So for them to staying on the timeline and staying within the budget might be a little bit different than for yourself. So I think there are two ways to mitigate that risk. First of all, on your own team, you need staff who is a subject matter expert, who has executed such projects before in real life, and can really stay on top of the contractor to make sure that they finish on time and on budget. And the second takeaway is that at least when you reach a certain scale, it is good to move out of the R&D and like a academic environment and move more towards an industrial setting. Maybe as an example, one of the partnerships I have with Trillium Renewable Chemicals. We are quite fortunate that we have Solvay so now a Science Co, as a validation partner for bioacrylonitrile and carbon fiber, and INEOS as the host for the demonstration site. And these two collaborations have saved Trillium a lot of time and a lot of money.
Okay, so that was really making sure you're finding the right partner, because obviously there are a number of people here that are potential partners for startups, right? And so selecting that partner is pretty important. I know Norbert, in one of the earlier sessions, we're talking about the skill set and the profile of the consortium that you put together. Okay, Shaun, to you.
So can you repeat the question?
Yeah, what was sort of the biggest challenge that you overcame, how did you overcome it and not fall victim to it?
It's really interesting because it's somewhat the opposite of the story you just gave. We do everything ourselves. We don't use any contractors unless it's a plumber to come in and put a toilet in. Sure, someone else can do that. Everything else we do ourselves. We are a team of 12, 9 of them are engineers. Basically, if you need something made, go make it. Our problem's been the flip of that, and it's getting the actual expertise from a science perspective internally. And then You know what? As I'm saying that, I'm realizing it's the same problem we're having. It's getting them to understand there's a commercial need. I don't care how many tests you run. It doesn't matter how much effort you put in. What are the results? And it is literally the flip of that. Getting someone to manage them, getting a PhD to come in who's never ever looked at a company before, doesn't understand that results are more important than how many tests you've run. That for us has been make or break. In fact, it's cost us 6 months, for example, 2 years ago. It cost us 6 months because goals were not aligned. I suppose you'd say that. So putting the right structure in place internally, making sure we all have the same goal. It's incredibly clear what we're trying to achieve, and it's one goal. Everyone's trying to achieve one goal. For us, it's making a material that is repeatable. So as soon as we can get that, you can start going on to all sorts of different places. The challenge is if you're not a scientist by background, you don't know how they think. If you're not a PhD by background, you don't know what experience they've gone through. I'm an engineer. I understand how engineers think. We bond pretty quickly. So the challenge is, yes, it's really understanding other humans and how other humans think, which I suppose is a very, very broad answer.
And Jacob, to you finally, just remind us how old your company is, and then you can tell us about some of those challenges might be more recent or when you first started.
So our company is about 8 years old. Originally, we set out to create renewable chemicals from wood waste. New Zealand has a huge forestry asset. Our original concept was to actually bring technology from North America and Europe, which was world leading, to New Zealand because they had already piloted, they were further along that development journey. And in our minds, that was a way to de-risk the capital outlay by working with companies which were already fairly well advanced. What that meant was that, in fact, from a capital perspective, there was perceived third-party technology risk. We didn't have the patents, and that's a fair risk, definitely. Through that journey, we actually managed to navigate a pathway to discover our own technology play, and that's what we've really doubled down on in the last 2 to 3 years. Gareth, who's sitting there in the front row, is our CTO, and we had to bring Gareth on board with the objective of building our own team, own R&D capability, doing everything ourselves. So finding something novel is hard, and then making money from it's even harder. And you really need to have conviction to keep going when the realities set in and drive through to deliver a result. You need to be quite adaptable if the data or the advice or the science is telling you to point in a different direction. And you also need to be quite honest with yourself and have the discipline to kill an idea if it's really not working.
Okay, thank you. Nav, turning to you, I'm assuming you've had to sort of helicopter into a few portfolio companies to deal with some nasty stuff, I suppose. What is the most common problem that you've got to go and solve or to rectify or smooth over?
Yeah, no, I think as your portfolio grows, it is the your portfolio management takes a lot of time, and those, unfortunately, the nasty moments become more and more frequent. But yeah, I mean, yes, we do have a large portfolio, and those moments come, I would say, not that frequently, but yes, we have seen those moments. And it's also the fact that as you invest more and more, and as you have more experience, you now know what to do, which is good. So in my experience, I think the most common thing where we had to really roll up our sleeves and sit with the management was the fact that in a lot of situations, the founder gets carried away. And he or she wants to do a lot of things. So the focus on the core strategy shifts away because of, I would say, small victories or, something getting successful, or just something, catches their whims and fancies and say, okay, this looks good, let's go there. So I think as investors and as very active investors on the board, we have seen a lot of situations where we come and sit with the senior management and the founders just on refining the strategy and doing a course correction and getting the senior management team and the founder back on track. So I think that's the most frequent one. The second most frequent one is the talent and the leadership needs. We do come in and do a lot of organizational gap study because we have seen companies at different maturity levels. So we understand that when a company is going from a startup to an early growth, there are organizational gaps. And the senior management, the whole structure needs a little bit of tweaking. And that's where we come in. We do an organizational gap study. We understand what is missing, and we obviously try to fill that gap. The third is that for investors, obviously everything resides with money and capital. So I think sometimes we have worked with the senior management on capital allocation and just refining their thesis, because I think the management thinks in a different way, we think in a different way, and given our experience and the fact that we are international investors, we see markets from a different angle, and we are investors in different markets. So I think we bring in that perspective and try to see that capital is allocated in the most optimal and efficient way. I think that's the third most, I would say, frequent event where we come in and sit with the founders and investors. The final thing would be, I think, on the governance and the risk management, where, again, as we see the company growing from a startup to early stage growth or late stage growth, I think the governance and the risk management within the company needs a change. I mean, they have to be more, I would say, sophisticated. As they grow, they have to deal with more regulators. They have to have more processes in place. As a startup, the culture is still, you hustle a lot. But as you grow, then you need to have proper procedures, structures, systems in place, have a proper guy who can speak with the regulators and all that stuff. So I think that's where also we have helped the companies quite a bit.
And we talked about earlier today in one of the discussions, we talked about founders not chasing the shiny balloon or the new idea, right? Which is easier said than done because everyone's an entrepreneur and that gets you to where you are, right? So how do you have that? You've got a different mindset as an investor to the people that you're advising and working with investing in, I think. So how do you have that conversation?
Yeah, I think it all boils down to, the unit economics and the profitability and the commercial aspect of that project. So, for example, the ag tech companies we are invested in, he sees a lot of, for example, government projects in India. Okay, the government in India is doing a lot of projects to basically replace coal with biomass, for example. I'll give you an example where coal is being used in the power plant. This guy is more of an ag tech company, does the testing, the quality testing for a lot of stuff, and biomass is one of the things he can quality test. But the problem is that if you go into that, you're getting into government business, tendering business, which is probably not clean. Reimbursement risk is there, receivable risk is there. Whether the government will pay you or not, we don't know. Yes, the volumes will increase, the revenue will increase, but you have to sit with the guy that, we are not at that stage where we can take this kind of government risk and get into tendering and get into a receivable risk when the size of the company is very small. If your working capital increases quite a bit and then you run out of cash, then there's a problem again. So although, the projects look really, really attractive, but there are nuances within the project like receivables, tendering, all that stuff, which make the project unviable for a company of that size. If the company grows tomorrow, I'm happy to get involved to some extent. So this is a specific example I'm telling you. And similarly, you have to basically tell them different situations from our experience that, these are the pitfalls, and maybe our company has very thin margin of error given that fact that we are very small and we don't have that cash runaway. So you have to fight and you have to choose and fight your right battles, and it's basically survival. You have to survive to fight the next day.
Okay, thanks very much, Nav. Okay, so we're going to come to Justin. Going to lead with you because I know sort of your business is pivoted and changed a little bit over the years. So my question to you, and then we'll go to Jacob. How has your business changed over its short lifespan?
That's a good question. I'm sure most startups have the same issue, right? Like pivot is just part of daily life. But at Mojia Bio, we've switched products quite often. We started off in the agri-chem business, making vitamins, amino acids. Then the market fell out from under us. Things were a fifth of the price. It wasn't profitable to make anymore. And so we had to switch. So we started making polymers, plastics, bioplastics. And then now we are focusing heavily on making flavors and fragrances, things that are high value, low volume kind of products. So we've made this switch quite a lot, and at the end of the day, I think we've made quite a lot of gained quite a lot of insight and understanding of how to behave in this kind of environment. Because in China, things move really fast. You have to be really nimble. The moment something's profitable, the next day there's 50 competitors out there trying to make it. So what we realized is that we have to start developing whole platforms instead of just individual products. Get good platforms that can make a variety of products, so you can switch anytime you want. And your core biochemistries is still there. You need to kind of identify generational work, which is a lot of what we're doing with A-Star. Have a very quick to market MVP, but then have extensions to that really drive your cost down. And that's what will get you your initial revenue, so you can continue doing development over the years. And I think the last thing is that what we've done polymers along about the same time that we started doing agrichem stuff, and that industry has stayed on with us, right? And the key thing there is that we've developed a good downstream integration all the way to product formulation, working with the off-takers, working with Nippon to test our products and all that. And having all that really secures your product, I think, makes it a lot easier for you to keep making that and doesn't let competitors get in. So I think that's what we learned about, with what we having to pivot and all that.
Okay, thanks very much, Justin. And Jacob, I know you've got a different type of pivot.
Yeah, kind of to your point before about not chasing shiny things, and I don't ever think we chase shiny things, but originally we were trying to develop a platform, like a biorefinery platform that produces a kraft lignin or lignin and cellulose and hemicellulose, and we'd be able to sell into a wide variety of applications. And what we found is it was very hard because we were spread over so many applications, and we needed to sell all of it because it all comes from a tree for it to make sense. And through time, we've really focused in and evolved to try and zero in on what we think really lands, and you turn up the next day and that set of assumptions and value propositions still sings true. And that's landed on bitumen, which is probably one of the least sexy applications there are, but it makes sense commercially. There's structural supply gaps coming, but demand for bitumen is going to remain flat for decades to come. There's not too many alternatives, and we found an application for developing intellectual property in that space. So it's scalable. We've got a supply agreement with a pulp and paper mill for our first plant. We've got a really strong engagement with a customer and a commercial supply agreement. So those things stack up, and then it's very easy to focus on.
Great, thank you. Simon and then Shaun, we've just got a couple of minutes left.
Yeah, maybe again the Trillium perspective can help answering this question. So when Trillium started, the concept was to develop a 3-stage process: sugar to glycerine, glycerine to acrolein, acrolein to acrylonitrile. And then we had a focus on the carbon fiber market. But after a while, we pivoted and we are starting now with glycerine. So that greatly reduced the complexity of the project. But at the same time, we also sacrificed an opportunity to develop this new technology, at least for now. And what we did, similar timing, was to branch out and not only work on the carbon fiber market, but to also branch out to the different applications. So, and this really helped a lot to de-risk the project and to create more commercial traction. So I think that the lesson learned here is you need to understand when is the right timing to focus and when is the time to broaden the scope. So in other words, if you work for a startup or if you work with a startup, you need to love what you do, but you cannot be in love with what you do, because this will make you blind and you might lose the moment to pivot.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Shaun?
That's a beautiful saying. I like that. We had a very distinct pivot moment for us, but it was a technology pivot, not a product pivot. So if you're familiar with micro-based materials, they're grown in the final shape you want them to be in. The properties are amazing. They match that of polystyrene, but it would mean, let's say Samsung wants 10,000 units to cover their TVs. You then need 10,000 individual molds growing in a climate control chamber for 2 weeks. That doesn't work at scale, makes it very expensive. So we started doing this as a company, We got to that point, we realized, to your point about unit economics, this doesn't scale. If it does, no one's going to pay for it. If they do pay for it, we're running out of money. So let's shut down. But instead of shutting down, we thought, how do we take what this material can do in a material property point of view and scale it the way plastics scale it? And to us, that was looking into the plastics, understanding you have one main mold in plastics, you use that mold many, many, many times, you pump out over a few seconds parts rather than over 20 days apart, and they use pellets. And for us, the pellets was the priority. So that's where we came up with this. It's the same product anyone else is using in terms of micro-based materials. It's the same base principles of how you grow them, but by pelletizing them, coating these in a biopolymer, we can now use the same plastic equipment in terms of molding that into shape. And that really merges the world of the biomaterials that have been around for a long time for micro-based materials, but the proven industry scale, profitability, unit economics of plastic-based materials. And it was the best thing we've ever done as a company. So.
A good pivot. A good pivot.
Great pivot, yeah.
Thanks, Shaun. Nav, last message from you before we wrap up the panel. So one lesson or tip to help growing biodevelopers scale efficiently, quickly, and without failure. One thing they should all have at the top of their New Year's resolution list.
I think the top 2-3 things which one should have if you're trying to scale up is definitely the positive unit economics, because I think scalability is all about unit economics. I mean, you can only scale if you're making money, correct? Second would be to really, really spend time and see the repeated purchase or the customer behavior, because you have to have that repeatability and stickability when you're trying to scale. And the third is your bench strength, because as your company scales up, I think the requirement from the talent, the leadership team, the senior management team is totally different. So I think it's to do with the team, your hold on the customers, and the unit economics, I would say. Those are the 3 key features, I would say.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Well, listen, it's a big topic. It's something we tackle at any of our events. We're always talking about how to scale efficiently, effectively, etc. So, you've got a consultant that's worked with lots of scalable companies. You've got 3 bio-developers, founders, and you've got an investor. So, and we've got 2 hours of drinks in half an hour's time to find them and pick their brains, right? So if you've got a question, don't let them leave before you extract as much knowledge and insight from them as possible. But for now, let's put our hands together and thank our panelists.